we all know, in Michiana, we now have 2 new mayors. And joining us right now is Mayor-elect of Elkhart, Rod Roberson. Rod, how you doing, man?
I am doing fine. Casey, how about yourself?
I am doing well. First of all, I just want to give a shout out to you and your people because you were booked today. You're booked solid. I'm on vacation Friday, so we couldn't do it on Friday. And so we ended up making this work. So I'm glad that we were able to do that because we've been trying to get together for some time now. So thank you for making the time. I appreciate it.
Let me say thank you for making the time as well. But this is barely working because I'm still on my way to you. and I just left the eye doctor, who obviously, Dr. Hartnett is wonderful at Gross Nickel, just to let you know. I want to give a little plug. As a matter of fact, some of her folk are listening right now, so I guess they listen to you on a regular basis. So I just was trying to get out of there in enough time. She did the pressure in my eyes, and I said, I gotta go.
Hey,
so I'm coming around the corner as I speak.
I appreciate that. So you let us know when you get here. We'll break early. We'll let you in. You can come in and get in front of the microphone. So because I want to make sure, because if we wait too long, you're not going to have any time to talk when you get into the 5:30.
No, I understand.
Okay.
And from what I understand about you, you need a little time to talk yourself.
Yeah, a little bit. Hey, let's start off with the thing that we're hearing about the peace mural today, and then we'll get into some of the heavier stuff. The peace mural. The Elkhart Redevelopment Commission approved trying to buy the building that has that. So some residents are concerned that that's going to be torn down. Do you have any idea what's going to happen with that?
Well, the redevelopment, the city wants to gain possession of the property first, and then and see whether or not there is some space so that we can develop that block. That block is a wonderful block that provides an interest into our city. Mm-hmm. So we want to find the opportunity to be able to develop it. But we also want to make sure that we save that mural. That mural was actually painted by Kelby Love. He was a friend of mine. We actually played football together. But he was an excellent artist. And Kelby and his mom and relatives still live in Elkhart. And we want to ensure that the mural stays because it provided a way in which by the way, I'm outside.
Okay.
To provide a way in which that mural can add and continue to add to the community. So there's a win-win here for us to be able to do them both.
Okay, that's perfect. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a little break. We're going to go early so we can let you in, actually get you in front of a microphone, catch your breath, and then we'll continue the interview then. All right. So we're going to go and put him back on hold. We'll go get Rod Roberson, bring him in here so he's not actually trying to talk to us from outside the door. We got more coming up, 95.3 MNC. Helps if I do the right microphone because I keep switching my microphones around. Rod Roberson, how you doing?
I'm doing
in the flesh, in person.
Finally,
how you doing? Finally. Been trying to link up for a long
eyes.
time. And again, thank you again for making the time. So he called us because he was running late. So he's driving over here. He calls us. We broke early, so now we can go to 5:30.
All right, great.
So we got the next 15 minutes with you.
All right.
So we talked about the mural, which obviously is in the news today, and you're going to do everything you can to preserve the mural. I know
Absolutely, and preserve the building if we can. But obviously, it'll be up to the developer. But we want to make sure that we have access, we have control over the site, so that we can better make sure that we are working with this developer in order to make them understand the significance of this mural. So if we can make them understand that, then obviously we can do them both.
Well, and you have a lot of redevelopment, obviously, in Elkhart anyway.
We do.
So, and it was one of the things too that I thought it was kind of interesting because new resident of Elkhart City, I'm watching the incumbents and then I'm watching their opponents kind of agree on that. They like the direction that the city is going for the most part, that there's development, there's investment coming in there. Then they kind of had some, obviously, your differing political points of view. But when you have a mural thing and it's part of redevelopment, you want to preserve the mural, but you also want to redevelop, you got to balance that. Mm-hmm. And what is your strategy going forward with redevelopment, making sure that there's no issues with obviously making your voter base upset while continuing to advance the city with some of these policies now?
No issues? Come on, walk on water, do a little bit.
I got a job to do, man. I got a job to do.
No, the best that you can do is make sure that you have both voices at the table, or all voices at the table, in order to get the richest input. And then you make a decision, and hopefully you can convince people to understand that this is in the best interest of the whole. We know that redeveloping that entire block will allow us, because we want to go down to Reading, almost to the tracks going north. And it actually starts right there at Prairie. So if indeed we get that entire block, which is what we're trying to do, it could provide the impetus for not just that block, but areas surrounding it to be able to be revitalized as well. So I think the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, as one might say. So we want to find the appropriate way to pull that thread through. So we got to make sure that the people who are concerned about that mural, they have their voice. And I'm concerned about the mural as well, because I do understand that how that area kind of speaks to itself and actually grows from within. We need to make sure that people are vested. And so if we're able to save the mural and be able to get the redevelopment, hey, that's a win-win.
Hey, a couple of years ago, I took a bunch of listeners to Belfast, and those murals are still there.
Are they?
From the Troubles. And they're still there, but Belfast is a totally revitalized city. So it can be done. It can be done and balanced.
You mean since the war?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. All the old propaganda is still up there. Yeah. They left it up.
You know, some of it could be significant for certain areas, and we have to look at it in the sense of what will make a neighborhood invest in itself. What will make the people be encouraged to be a part of empowering itself, so that they can own these assets and be able to make sure that they maintain them, they grow them, that they are a part of them. So there are ones that you want to keep, and there may be some that we may want to move on from. But we can't move on from them until we actually have the opportunity to make sure that there's a good sense of rooting and development that can occur, not just in the area, but allow the people there to be able to, as I said, connect to it. And that's part of that discussion that we need to have inside of those communities.
Okay. And I also want to remind everybody, too, that you're not actually the mayor yet. You're still the mayor-elect.
Thank you.
Okay? You got 2 weeks.
There is a mayor.
Two weeks.
I talked to him on my way over here. He's still in the seat. So I just want to let you know that Tim is still living and breathing.
The reason I bring that up is I'm sure you're getting those questions. I'm getting questions. Ask him about this. I'm like, well, he's not in yet. So you got to wait. So obviously, some questions that we got from listeners, okay?
Okay.
Will you be committed to a balanced budget? What are some of the plans that you have for your first few months in office? What are some of the first things that you're going to be doing right out of the gate?
Mm-hmm. Either one of those?
Either one. Your choice.
Obviously, as a city, we can't run in deficit. We will not run in deficit. We are actually in a pretty good financial position. We're strong in our cash balances. We have additional revenue that is coming into the city. But even though we want to make an investment that's going to have a payoff for whatever we do. And so I don't want to make investments just for the standpoint of trying to make the city look nice. We want to make an investment that's going to reap a return on the other end. So all of my investments will have a what I call a financial equation that makes sense for that particular community, that particular block, or the city as a whole. So yeah, that's a commitment to a balanced budget, if you want to call it that. But I want to make sure that we know that just like we invested $100 million into the River District, we're looking for a $300 million return. If we invest into Tosin, we're looking for a return on the other end. Not with, I don't think it's going to be with that kind. It's not going to be threefold, but it will be an investment in making sure that we have a city that has neighborhoods that are growing and changing themselves, as I said earlier, using that mural as an example. So yeah, we are committed to making sure that we have an investment strategy for everything that we do. As it relates to the first few months in office, well, first of all, I have to make sure that I'm going through the process of getting the right people in place. My commitment was that I wasn't bought and paid for. I'm not. Don't believe in cronyism, nepotism, and none of that stuff. So what I want to do is make sure I interview for all positions, which is what I'm doing now. If you are or in an office, I have said that that means that you're a finalist, and so I want to give you credit for being where you are. And then I'm going to interview others to see whether or not, and we have a posting on my website of those jobs that I'm looking for as we speak, and they're primarily what I want. I want a leadership cabinet, or let's call it a leadership group. and they will be cross-functionally across our entire city, meaning a controller, HR person, chief of staff, city engineer, legal. They cover our entire gambit, and they will be a leadership group for me, and they will actually begin to manage other areas, other department heads throughout the city. Because, what we have is 23 department heads all reporting to me. In any management structure, 23 reporting to you is kind of a tough one. And so what we want to do is break it up into pieces, make it more manageable. In my first 60 to 90 days, I will have the other departments. They'll go through the same process. And we would hope at the end of the day, we've picked the most qualified, the most skilled people to provide what I call unparalleled service. And I ran on that. And so if we're going to provide that service, then we got to get the right people in the right place. And it has to be a culture that understands what service is. Service is not just something that you kind of put on your hat on every day or your uniform every day and just go out and do your job. Service is understanding that the residents are our clients. You, since you are a resident, thank you very much for moving to Elkhart.
Sure. Don't make me regret it.
Don't worry. Don't worry. If you haven't already, you won't now. Okay.
I've moved like 4 times, so I'm just saying I keep getting disappointed.
That's been quick. You look like a young man. You can't keep moving like that. So at any rate, I want to make sure that people feel as though they're getting the service for their investment of tax dollars into the city. And so that means that providing that kind of unparalleled service starts with hiring the right people. So I will make sure that that occurs, and that's what's going to happen in the first 60, 90 days.
Now, speaking of hiring the right people, you know where I'm going. Everybody wants to know who's going to head up the police department. What are your plans for the police department?
Don't know yet.
What changes?
They're going through the same process. I mean, everybody goes through the same process. And what that means is that for the police department in general, I'm not sure if it's going to be somebody inside or somebody outside, but it will be somebody that's qualified to be the police chief. We know that there's some challenges at the police department, but we know we have some good police officers as well. We need to support support the police officers in general. The department is supported. They were supported by the last administration. They were supported by the administrations in which I was on city council. I was very much a friend of the police department during the years that I was on council. I was the one that started the cameras and literally made sure that we had cameras that were working, I would hope, and cameras that were on the dashboards as well as on the vests to make sure that the officers could defend what they were doing inside of an environment. And that to me, and that actually to most people, have become a real benefit and asset to a police officer. Now we see from the public what the camera sees, and sometimes it's not as attractive as we may like. Well, we got to deal with that from an accountability standpoint, but we support the police officers first and foremost. But what we need to do is make sure that everybody is held accountable. Everyone. We all are accountable, and the police will be as well. And so we want a police chief that could do simultaneously those two things. And we got to do it in a culture that says Elkhart is a different kind of city. I mean, while we are 52,000 strong, we are a diverse city, both multi-generational as well as by race. And we need to make sure that we are looking at our city in its totality so that we can police it, because that's the front-facing department. So I know how important it is. But we have to make sure that we're dealing with if we bring down the prospect or the perception of safety in our downtown and in some of our outlining neighborhoods, we have a city that can just completely take off. Now that investment that we're making in the River District makes not just sense, it actually triples, quadruples. Because if people feel as though they're in a walkable community, which is what we're inserting downtown, and they can walk around and not feel as though somebody is getting ready to rob them or stick them up or any of those things, gosh, what kind of relationship will those folk have with our city? And those folk are us, which is the reason why the police department is so vitally important. The police chief has yet to be determined, just like all of the other departments that I just talked about. I am going to make sure that we canvass, we do a selection process, and we will choose the right person for all of the right reasons.
Okay. Just don't hire anybody from New Bedford, Massachusetts. Especially if their name is...
Are you from New Bedford?
No, especially if his name is Ron and Teachman. Don't hire that guy. So
I hope I get his resume.
Yeah. He's going to try and sell you a piece of technology. He's a former police chief in South Bend, in case you didn't know.
I didn't.
Yeah, bad guy. Anyway, then you have.
You got to tell me how you choose to think about Rod.
Yeah, it's no bad guy.
All right.
So anyway, then you have a lot of people who are very concerned about South Bend. Obviously, Elkhart's got to pass with drugs. A lot of people, obviously used to be the joke when I got here. It's much better than it was, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
South Bend crime out of control. They don't seem to be able to get a handle on it. There's different theories as to why that is. People are really concerned that is now going to move over and shift into Elkhart. If you look at the numbers, murders are down, rapes are down,
Mm-hmm.
some of the high crimes are down,
Mm-hmm.
assaults are way up. Violent criminal assaults since 2016, way up. What kind of a strategy as a mayor would you like the police to approach? Mayor Buttigieg in South Bend went with a numbers sort of a strategy as opposed to a community strategy. I heard you mention the numbers-based strategy for the
Mm-hmm.
economic development, which is, again, a totally different thing. But there's going to be some people that go, well, is that going to be his approach with policing, or will it be more community-based? Or is that just going to be based on the determination of who's going to be the new chief?
No, both. I mean, everything has to be quantified. I mean, it's hard to make sure that if you are successful, you have to be able to know why you're successful. And it has to be some kind of results metrics that drive that relationship. So, yeah, numbers have to be a part of it, as well as we have to make sure there's a proactive way that we're engaging in a relationship with our community. And that needs to be as kind of ferociously addressed and aggressively addressed as we would anything with respect to numbers. You can't run the police department by numbers. What we can do is make sure that both are working simultaneously together. I'm not afraid of what's going on in South Bend. We've always known that we have been in the past a community that sits in the middle of Detroit and Chicago, Cleveland and Cleveland, Indianapolis, and we've always gained migrants from all of these different areas. And so with that said, we have to make sure we know who's coming into our community. We have to make sure that we have a relationship with those who come into our community. As far as South Bend and Elkhart, we obviously want to make sure that we're keeping our folks safe, and I know that the new mayor there is trying to do the same with his community. How he works with his community will be specific around South Bend. Elkhart is a different community in South Bend. I mean, we are a blue-collar community. We actually have a lot of our community that are in some of the low to moderate income areas are blue-collar. And with that said, they're working in some of our RV manufacturers and or suppliers. So that creates a certain relationship where we should know where they are via first, second, or third shift. And if we do know the assets in the community to help us kind of glue this together, a proactive community policing strategy can work. But that's Elkhart. South Bend is different. It's more of a service-based community. It deals in a completely different kind of time frame as it relates to people being on the street or not. And so, no, we're not South Bend. I don't worry about South Bend coming to Elkhart and Elkhart going to South Bend. But we need to know who's going back and forth. And that's the way we do that is to know the people inside of our community.
Speaking of knowing the people inside the community and knowing who's coming and going, will Elkhart, under your leadership, be a sanctuary city for illegal immigration?
No, I don't know what that means. I don't think that that's something that we even would have to try to think about dealing with. We do have immigrants inside of our community, both documented and not. I want to make sure that we are dealing with the undocumented immigrants just as well as we're dealing with the documented, because they live in our community. So I want to make sure people are out in neighborhoods and their input is actually received. Sanctuary, I haven't even thought about. I want to follow the governmental laws as it relates to those, or the federal laws. I'll follow them based on immigration. But for Elkhart, I'm interested in making sure that all of our community is being heard and being seen and being a part of it. I live in a community, I live on a block. One on the right side is a Latino family, and then it's me, and then there's an African American family, and then there's a white family. And on the other side, there's a white family. On the other side, there's a Latino family. So it's a very mixed block. And if indeed I have everybody engaged in the civic square, then our block is a better block. And quite frankly, that's what I'm looking to do. So I'm not trying to ensure that we are violating any federal, national laws. We're just doing what Elkhart does. And I'm going to make sure that I'm listening to the Latino voices, the African American voices, and the white voices along the way. That's the only way to balance a budget. That's the only way to make sure a mural gets up or down, the only way we develop an entire community. That's the only way we build a downtown. That's what building Elkhart together is all about. It's not singling out a way in which we are in violation of the way America lives its life. And that's what I want Elkhart to be.
Okay. Less than a minute, but I wanted to give you a chance to respond. There was an allegation that in the transition, one of the first things you asked about was whether you got a free car and what that car was. Wanted to give you a chance to respond to that.
I tell you, why is that even a conversation? I tell you, in the transition, I tell you, this is what.
I don't think you should have a car.
No, I think
it's a waste of taxpayer dollars, but that's just me.
No, that's not true. I mean, matter of fact, getting around the city, I mean, that's part of a benefit. But to be able to get around the city and make sure that we're being where we need to be. So, regardless of opinions. But what I did ask about was to make sure that I understood my benefits package. And it just so happens that it included a car. Well, the reason why I was asking the question is because I'm at I'm with the Elkhart Community Schools. Mm-hmm. And so the open enrollment was closing at that time. And my wife and I had to determine whether or not we were going to be on the city's health plan or whether or not we were going to be on the school system's health plan.
Okay.
And so with that said,
so you're just asking for the benefits package, and that was a part of it.
Benefits package, and obviously there's a car included. So wait a minute. That's a question that I asked only a couple of people. I'm wondering what's going on.
I ain't telling you nothing.
What's going
that's
on
not
with
happening.
That? Now, boy,
Rod,
I tell you, you just
I know,
butchered the English language.
I know everybody you know in Elkhart. I know everybody you know.
That, Casey? You don't know everybody I know in Elkhart.
Well, I probably know a few you don't too.
No, and I probably know a few you don't.
I'm sure you do. Hey, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much. I hope we can do this on a regular basis. I really do. We're going to disagree on a lot, but it'd be nice.
Why do you think that?
Because. Just based on what we hear with the campaign and everything.
Well,
we'll have disagreements, but we're not going to disagree all the time.
Come to me and ask. Mm-hmm. I'll be up front. I'll tell you how I feel, and we can get that all straightened out.
That's all we can do. Civil discourse in this country. That's what it's about.
Yeah, that's what
Rod Roberson, appreciate it. Best of luck in your transition. You got 2 more weeks.
I do.
2 more weeks until you're the mayor of Elkhart. Thank you very much for the time. Appreciate it. We got to go. We got more coming up. 95.3 MNC.